of the children.
The year was 1985. And the offspring of heavy metal, thrash metal, had been around since the early 80s with bands like Megadeth and Exodus. It was gaining immense popularity with the album Kill 'Em All from Metallica. Thrash metal was a more fast, punky type metal that would get your head banging in seconds. As the years went on, the style started to get more heavy and sinister with bands like Slayer, Sodom, and Kreator. The lyrics and the music was more hellish in a way. Eventually, all the local metal kids from around the world wanted to make music just like these metal gods, but instead made something even more brutal than mankind itself. While thrash metal was still at an all-time high, the band Possessed would release their well-known 1985 debut, Seven Churches, which took a different turn and made everything heavier, hence death metal. They even have a song titled Death Metal. Then, in 1987, a band known by the name of Death released their debut, Scream Bloody Gore. Which most believe to be the first death metal album, but there is a common debate in the genre whether Seven Churches or Scream Bloody Gore was the first death metal album. Climbing up the ladder of the late 80s, there was more and more death metal and something else known as grindcore being released onto the public with bands such as Napalm Death, Carcass, Morbid Angel, Obituary, and Bull Thrower. Death metal kept getting more and more darker in 1989 with albums such as Altars of Madness by Morbid Angel, Severed Survival by Autopsy, and Consuming Impulse by Pestilence. When 1990 hit, death metal would get even sicker with bands like Cannibal Corpse, Deicide, and Cancer. '90 was also one of the first years to start having death metal from Sweden, such as Entombed. '91 would roll around, and that would be the first year to ever release an extreme amount of death metal albums. there was tons and tons of death metal coming from all around the world, all the way from Germany to the United Kingdom. All the local death metal bands from around the world were getting signed to the greatest metal labels such as Earache, Relapse, Roadrunner, and Metal Blade. Death metal would gain notoriety in the Sunshine State of Florida, with bands like Death and Morbid Angel becoming big names in the genre. The early 90s all the way up to 94 would continue to have more death metal come from all around the world. As these years would go on, we would start to see what is known as subgenres. A few examples of some of these subgenres would be death and thrash, blackened death, and brutal death metal. In my opinion, brutal death metal would be the best out of the whole genre. The brutal death metal sound would first be used by the band Suffocation in the album Effigy of the Forgotten. Then would evolve to 1993 with Pyrexia's Sermon of Mockery. The later 90s would continue to offer quality brutal death metal albums throughout the world with acts such as Deeds of Flesh, Broken Hope, and Dying Fetus. Around this point in time, the death metal scene would start to die down and gain less popularity, especially after the fall of MTV's Headbangers Ball. But these bands would not just give up, and pumped out some of their best work to this day. Every state and country around the world helped contribute to this amazing scene of music. Around 1997 to 2003, death metal would get more technical and challenging with bands like Mortal Decay, Disgorge, and Ton. Around this time, the death metal scene as a whole remained underground and not viewed with the public eye. Bands would either break up or go on hiatus. Even though there's been masterful death metal releases throughout the frozen era of death metal, it just didn't get as much attention as it used to. Fast forward to today. Death metal would get a resurgence with more mainstream bands like Cattle Decapitation, Nile, and Cannibal Corpse. A big part of the help of the resurgence was the internet when it became more used in later years. It has been easier to discover and get into older and newer death metal with the internet in more recent years. There's even bands these days emulating the old school death metal sound like Sanguishugabog, M-Death, and 200 Stab Wounds. We decided to ask a few people walking around town to see if the general population is aware of death metal. Here are a few interviews. Hi, my name is Ralph Cameron, and today we're going to interview people on the street, see if the general population is familiar with the genre of music, death metal. Here we go. Alright, so we've got our first subject here. What's your name, sir?
Gage Sarland.
Gage Sarland, okay, so the question I want to ask you is, are you familiar with the music genre death metal?
Yes, to an extent.
Okay. What would you say is your favorite band if you are familiar with any of them?
I'm not familiar in the sense of bands, but I have heard it before.
Okay. Alright, what's your name, sir?
My name is Evan Vandersloot.
Alright, so are you familiar with the genre of music death metal?
I've heard of it, but I'm not familiar with it at all.
Alright, that's all I need. I'm here with Nisai, and Nisai, what do you think of the genre music death metal?
I think it's alright, yeah.
Okay. I mean, have you ever heard any death metal songs?
I'm not sure. Does the Doom music like the video game soundtrack count?
We'll take it. We'll take it. So we've got Roman here, and Roman, are you familiar with the genre of music death metal?
I'd say I'm pretty familiar. I've listened to some songs in the death metal genre recently, and I've formulated an opinion on them. And I think I've tackled the vocals, the guitar, and the drum parts. So I can give my opinion on each of those. I listened to Spiritual Healing by Death, Liege of Intimacy by Suffocation, and Day of Suffering by Morbid Angel. Each of those had pretty good guitar tones. My favorite was definitely the Liege of Intimacy. It was a really good distortion tone. Spiritual Healing's tone was more synth-like, and I liked that about it. And in the Day of Suffering's tone was more chuggy. The style of that was pretty good in my opinion. I liked the vocals on Spiritual Healing and Day of Suffering, but Liege of Intimacy wasn't my favorite. It was a bit too much, a bit too overpowering with that one. But they're still all around good vocals. The drums on the songs were really good. They were really skilled drum players. I could tell in the band. The fills were really skilled, and they're really going really fast with that. And they're really just, it added a good mix to it.
Thank you very much, Roman. Thanks for the interview.
Yeah.
Would you say death metal is still recognized and appreciated every day? Yes. Death metal will always stay alive through the power of support and brutality.